Well, we're here with Billy Merrington, who's just completed his 25th Rolex Sydney to Hobart yacht race. But before we get into that, Billy, your real name's Peter, not Billy. Why? You didn't like the name Peter? It's a pretty good name, isn't it? How'd you get the name Billy?
So I did my first ocean race at the age of 14 on a boat called Doctor Who, and there was already another Peter there. So those geniuses there decided that I wasn't called Peter because there was already one of them, and they decided to just name me Billy the Kid. And it stuck like glue, and I've kind of stayed with it. So that's how we came about Billy.
Like all nicknames, it's a simple start, isn't it? And they stick forever.
Yeah, we're simple folk sailors. We come up with simple nicknames.
Yeah. But let's go back a step. Where did sailing come into your life? Because the Merrington name's a very famous name around Sydney. Where did sailing start for you?
As you say, it is a famous name for sailing. And my grandfather and his brothers were all members of the Sydney Amateur Sailing Club and sailed there for many years. But my sailing actually started at Pittwater. My father, Stephen Merrington, he bought my brother and I, Anthony, my brother and I, our first Manly Junior when I was about 5 or 6, and we just took straight to it and really gave it everything for our entire lives. So that's kind of where it began.
How'd you get on with your brother in a Manly Junior?
We didn't sail with each other for very long,
Right.
As brothers do. We had a few stoushes, and we ended up sailing against each other more than with each other as the years went on. But we do sail with each other again now, and it goes pretty good now.
Yeah. So from Manly Juniors, where did we go from there?
I started flying 11s for a couple of years, lasers, then kind of went into yachts after that. But I've always also sailed Etchells pretty early on from when I was in my late teens, and I've stuck with that for pretty much my entire life as well.
Well, let's get onto the ocean racing side. 14 on Doctor Who. How did you enjoy that as a 14-year-old?
Oh, it was pretty daunting. You know, I basically got straight involved, and they stuck me on the jib trim on the 52-footer, and I loved it. You know, it was pretty scary for a young kid, but that was the Coffs Harbour race, and then pretty much I did 10 of them in a row, and I pretty much couldn't get enough right from the get-go, really.
So you got the bug?
Got the bug, absolutely, yeah.
So who owned Doctor Who then?
That was owned by a guy named John Bailey. So that boat was the Davidson 55, which had previously been Dr. Dan. So, yeah.
Good downhill boat.
Good downhill, yeah. We had some good battles with the Ben Lexon designed, I think it was Madame Defarge, and there was another one named Canberra.
Yeah.
And we had some good battles with those guys back in those days.
So when did you do your first Hobart race?
The first thing at Hobart was with Bob Steele, another very famous sailor in these parts, on his first quest, which was a Nelson Marrick 43. So, yeah, a bunch of my friends and I got invited to sail there, and in actual fact, Anthony did that race as well, my brother. So that was our first race, and it was...
And memories of the first race? I mean, everyone's got memories of their first Hobart, I think. What were your memories of that race?
My memories of that race is primary memory. We nearly won and should have won, in my opinion, but didn't quite. And I think that's probably, a lot of people should have won but didn't. But it was a pretty standard Sydney to Hobart race. We went downwind, we got hit by a southerly, we reached across the straight, but I got to do a lot of steering as a young fella, which was pretty exciting for me. And when I remember when we finished the race and we thought we'd won, that was cool, and we thought it was hard. And I thought, oh, okay, I've ticked the box on the Sydney to Hobart race now. I don't really need to do any more. But history shows that
you got to keep going.
You've got to keep going, and you forget the bad bits pretty quickly. And by the time you get out of the customs house, you're already planning for your next one.
So how old were you? Did you first race?
I was a late starter, so I probably think I was 1995, so I was 24 when I did my first race.
So why do you say you should have won? Was there something you did wrong? Or the other boats were better?
I think the other... Well, we actually ended up coming second to Terra Firma. That was the year Terra Firma had a win, and we had them beaten at the Iron Pot, which many boats have won races by the Iron Pot, and it went ugly on us. So we basically drifted up the river. I think we had to beat them by about 40 minutes. They were about an hour behind us. We drifted up the river. Then when they got to the river, the standard rain cloud came with a little storm front in it and posted them straight up the river in 20 minutes, and that got them the win. So, yeah, we sailed well enough to win, but didn't.
So from there, what did you stay with Bob Steele and the Quest program?
Yeah, I did two races with Bob Steele. Then we went to the Kenwood Cup one year with Bob. I can't remember why. I think Bob might have moved on from that boat, and I did a bunch of races on 45 footers. Did a race on Brighton Star. Then 98 race I was on Sledgehammer, which was a small boat.
Tell us about that.
Well,
you remember that for all the wrong reasons.
Well, I do, yeah, but I do. It's kind of a funny one because a lot of people ask, well, you're in the 98 race, and I say, yes, I was. What type of boat were you on? I was on the weakest, smallest, lightest boat.
What was that, a Sydney 30?
It was a Sydney 40.
40, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the end result was, because we had such a flimsy little boat, we actually surprisingly made the correct decision when we saw the forecast on the first night to call it quits. Basically, as you'll recall, I think the midnight sked came up and they said, this is the forecast for tomorrow, which was pretty gnarly, and we had a pretty even 45 to 50 from the south in that boat was going to be pretty daunting. And one of our tactician, Ron Jacobs, who's another very famous sailor, came up and goes, boys, I don't think our boat's up for what's going to be dished out tomorrow. Maybe we should just call it. It's probably one of the smartest decisions ever made.
Yeah, very prudent.
Yeah, very prudent, yeah. So,
but from there, you got involved with some colourful characters, I guess you could call them. Yeah. Grant Warrington. Tell us about your time with Warro and his big boats and the disaster you had with him.
Yeah.
It ended well, though, that's the main thing.
Before that, I did 3 or 4 races in a row with Ludi Ingevale.
Oh, right, yeah.
He was also a very colourful character and a real enthusiast of the sport. So I did 3 races on Nicorette, and the first one we did, we had a win, which was fantastic. And then we had some kind of pretty, I guess you'd call them way out ideas on how to modify the boat. We kind of got in early on the canting keel program, but it was kind of a bit of a retrofit, and that kind of didn't go too well. And by the end, we were kind of getting a bit, I think the 3rd or 4th race we pulled out of, the canting keel started ripping off the side of the hull. So, yeah. But then, as you say, in 2004...
Sorry to interrupt. Just go back to Ludi, the year you won line honours. Tell us about the joy of that, or the thrill of winning line honours in the race. Pretty important.
Yeah, that was my first. That was my first real win in the Sydney Hobart race, and I had, we were surrounded with a good bunch of mates. I had, Knocker and Will McCarthy and Spike Dorian was there as well, and that was a pretty amazing win. We were kind of young at the time and very, very excited to win the race with a bunch of our friends. That was a particularly tough race, the 2000 race. We pretty much got hit by the southerly on the first evening and went upwind the entire way to Tasman. So it was an upwind race, and it was 2 reefs or 3 reefs and storm jibs and stuff the whole way. And then when we thought we were going to get to Tasman and get around it nice and easy, one of those storm fronts rolled through Tasman Island, and we got 45 to 50 at Tasman Island, down to 3 reefs and a storm jib. Had to cut away the J4. That kind of ended up on the rocks at Tasman Island. So, yeah. And not to mention, when we were rounding Tasman Island, it was also snowing. That's the only time I've ever done the Sydney to Hobart race, and there was snow. I don't know if it was actually snow, but there was ice particles, whether it was sleet or snow. It was bloody cold, I can assure you of that. But it was a pretty satisfying race and a lot of fun.
And were you on board as a helmsman? You're doing steering then?
Yeah, I was one of the helmsmen on that boat. That was kind of like a warm-up for the Canute Frostad was on that boat as well, and we was kind of trialling for the Volvo race with that team, yeah.
You were trialling?
Yeah, we were trialling, yeah. So myself and Knocker and a few others were seeing if we could join that Volvo team. We eventually got to do that, and do a couple of legs on the Volvo with Canute.
So that was the Volvo race of what, 2001?
2001. That
Yeah.
was the DG's Dragons.
That's right.
Volvo
So you
race.
did a couple of legs on
No, I just ended up doing the whole warm up with the boat, and then ended up doing the leg from Auckland to Rio, the Southern Ocean leg around Cape Horn.
Right.
The kind of like the marquee leg of the
Yeah.
City to Hope. Oh, sorry, the Volvo race. Yeah.
So let's stay on that for a moment. What was that like? What boat were they? Volvo six? What was that year?
Yeah, they were Volvo 60s.
60s, yeah.
Yeah, so our one was the DG's Dragons
Yep.
Volvo 60. And that was probably the scariest ocean racing I've done. And I probably, it was everything I expected it to be, crossing the Southern Ocean and more.
Did they have ice limits that year?
No ice limits.
You go as far south as you
Yeah,
liked.
we were going as far south as we possibly
Yeah.
could. And I do remember one particular 24-hour period where we'd, because we were in areas where we knew there were ice bergs, and we went through a growler field during the day. So we were kind of sailing through this growler field, dodging the little mini bergs in daylight hours. And then obviously later on that day, the sun went down, and Canute was pretty concerned that, we wouldn't be able to see these. So I know Knocker and I, being the youngest on the boat, Canute volunteered us to be the guys that had this kind of one-eyed night vision scope, and we had to stand on the jockey pole up at the side stays when going downwind at 25 to 30 knots, trying to look through this ice scope to see if we could spot the icebergs before we hit them. And it was snowing, it's -4 degrees, and I know Knocker and I could only do about 15 minutes each, and then you'd go down, you'd get your hands next to the little blow heater and try to put some feeling back in.
Wow.
Then you'd swap around. It was basically...
So you obviously missed them, but did you any close calls at night?
None at night.
Right.
Well, not that we know. As I said, we probably couldn't really see any more than about 2 boat lengths with this night scope anyway.
So how fresh did you get down there?
We had
wind speed.
We had some storms of 50, so they come through in snow squalls down there. We had a lot of snow squalls. You'd be sailing along and it's pleasant 25, 28 knots with the A4 or whatever up, and sure enough, you'd get a big black cloud come behind you. It'd start snowing. You'd get 45 knots. You'd try to hang on with the A4, and then basically that'd last for about half an hour, and it'd go back to a pleasant 25 to 30. Yeah, so
A few wipeouts?
we had a few big ones, yeah. And one particular one in the middle of the night, I know, put the wind up us, and we kind of went with no spinnaker for
Throttled
the next,
back a bit.
Yeah, throttled back and for the next 12 hours. And
So did you see Cape Horn?
yeah, we
Was
did.
it daylight?
We had a beautiful day around at Cape Horn.
Fantastic.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Beautiful.
A4 spinnaker up, 25 to 30 knots, surfing along, and went pretty close to the Horn, so probably about 5 miles off. So it was a pretty fun experience. Good to get that one off the bucket list.
So you haven't got an earring?
I haven't got an earring or a tattoo, and I'm happy I've ticked it off. I don't really have to go down there again.
Did you try and do another Volvo after that, or around the world race?
No. I kind of, once that kind of stage went through, I changed over to the America's Cup after that. I got an offer to go to the Swedish America's Cup team as a B-boat sailor, and I just kind of went off down the America's Cup track. So,
But your brother Anthony, youngster, didn't he go halfway around the world in a big catamaran or something? Didn't he try and break around the world record?
He is, yeah. He's done a lot of impressive stuff,
Yeah.
youngster. So he's done. I'm not 100% sure. Pretty sure he's done 3 complete Volvo races.
Right.
And he also attempted to do a Jules Verne.
That's right.
Attempt with the Ellen MacArthur team.
End up in Fremantle.
Yeah,
Fremantle.
they ended
That's
up in
right.
Fremantle.
Yeah,
They broke
yeah.
the rig somewhere in the Southern Ocean when he was steering. Actually, he doesn't like.
right.
He doesn't like to tell people that, but
Oh, well, if he sees this, everyone will know now. But,
not his fault.
no,
Not his fault.
no. Well, so getting quickly to the America's Cup, was that the one in Auckland you did? Where was it?
Yeah, so I did that. That was the one in Auckland. So that was the 2001 America's Cup. which was 2003 America's Cup.
Right.
2003 America's Cup, which is ultimately won by a Lingy.
Yeah.
I was in that team as a B-boat sailor, main trimmer on the second boat.
Right.
And that kind of led on to joining the French team for the 2007 America's Cup in Valencia. And I was in that team as a main sheet trimmer and...
on the number one boat? They
Well-
only had what? Did they have?
Yeah, so we had two boats.
Right.
I was kind of backup main sheet trimmer, so I did a lot of racing. But then when it wasn't main sheet trimming, I was the main grinder.
Do you enjoy that, America's Cup?
Yeah, loved it. Yeah, that was a really exciting time of my life. It's the 2007 America's Cup in Valencia was probably, in my opinion, the best America's Cup. You know, there was 10 or 11 really evenly matched teams. The racing was it was old school racing. You know, there was grinders going hard, attacking duels, and
It was close in the end. Close in the end too, wasn't it?
yeah, the races were close. Every race was close, and it was close right to the end. So, and we had a really good community up there. You know, there was hundreds of sailors living in a small town or a city. We developed quite a really good community of people with the families and everything. So a lot of fun that one.
So while that was going on, did you come back for Hobart races, or did you stay away for the race for a few years?
Yeah, so I did. So I think, I'm just trying to remember. So the 2004 race I did with Warrow, and I came back for that race. I think I'd been signed up for that 2007 America's Cup.
Right.
So I did 2004, and that's the race where the keel...
This is on Scandia
On
with Grant
Skandia,
Warrington.
yeah.
Okay, talk us through all this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting one. We were, you know, I always... You know, I always think that I'm going to win the race. That's kind of one of the things I'm always confident. Well, I thought we were going to win that race, and we were going pretty hard. And we were sailing along at 2 o'clock in the morning, and sure enough, there was a massive bang, and basically laid over. And I was in the bunk. I got up, and what the hell's going on here? Sure enough, I can see the keel flailing around inside the hull. So the ram had actually broken. That kind of cants the keel, or both. So both rams had broken, and so the keel was kind of free-willying, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so we all got up on deck and pulled the sails down, and the keel's flailing around. Interesting, the way the keel was built, it kind of had fallen off its hinge a little bit, and then, you know, Warren will be able to tell you a bit more of how it all worked, but basically what that meant is that each time the keel was moving, it was basically destroying a bulkhead. So we got on deck, and we kind of decided to kind of go downwind with bare poles.
You're fair way east, weren't you, too?
Yeah, we're a long way out there, And I was steering, and Warrow and GT were down there, you know, checking out the engineering, and I was kind of cruising along downwind. And they were trying to tie the keel in the centre, and each time we'd get kind of rolled by a wave and rip another bulkhead off the inside. Anyway, so after about 2 or 3 hours of this, Warrow and GT come up, and Warrow says to me, I'm fairly confident that the keel's going to fall off.
At least he was confident.
I said, well, that's not something to be confident about. So we go, okay, right. So we decide to kind of stop and call the police boat, and they come out and they rescue us. Yeah, so
you jumped off into a life raft, is that right? And then
that's right. Yeah,
transferred to the police launch.
But not before. So we kind of basically made a mayday call, and we were all sitting on deck, and we deployed one life raft, and the guys got in, and they kind of they unfortunately floated away a little bit and got picked up by someone else. And then we were there, and we were kind of sitting on deck, and I thought to myself, I'm going to go downstairs and get my wallet and phone. This is ridiculous. And they're going, well, you can't go downstairs because we could tip upside down when you're down there. And I'm going, well, it's either that or spend 2 days at Banks and so I'm getting my wallet. So they go, no, you can't go down there.
Your wallet was more important than your life, okay.
You can't go down there, Billy. Anyway, sure enough, I go down there, and I'm grabbing my wallet, and all these blokes start yelling, hey, Billy, can you get my wallet? It's in the green bag, and mine's under the net. And so, anyway, so we did. We jumped off on the life rafts, but when we jumped off, the chopper was already there, and the police boat was already there, so it was kind of that kind of part of it wasn't too scary. But that's the famous shot you see of Warro's boat with someone jumping into the life raft is actually me mid-air on that photo.
So you're last out, were you?
I was having an argument with Andrew Henderson, Hendo, about who can be last off. So I wanted to be last off, but he won the battle and he held the rope while I jumped.
So they subsequently rescued the boat, didn't they?
I think they went back and found
it.
Yeah. Well, I ended up doing the Fastnet race on it. 9 months later, they put it back together and we went and sailed the Fastnet race. Yeah.
Right.